She had always smiled like she loved me. Her voice, sweet and convincing, carried a warmth that could melt any doubt. But I learned the hard way that appearances are often deceiving. Every call she made, every word she spoke, I recorded. I recorded it all. And what I discovered wasn't just shocking, it was devastating. My own daughter, the person I had loved unconditionally, had been using me, using my trust, using my love. And the worst part, I had no idea for years. It started with small amounts, a few $100s here, a few hundred there. She would call me, her voice trembling just enough to make me feel her stress, her fear, her desperation. "I promise I'll pay you back," she said, always ending her calls with that same line. And like an idiot, I believed her. Time after time, I let her borrow money, thinking I was helping my child in need. But something didn't sit right. The pattern was subtle at first. An extra call in the evening, a story that didn't quite match the last one, a tiny contradiction I almost overlooked. Maybe it was a sense deep in my gut, an instinct I had ignored for years. But one night, curiosity turned into a decision that would change everything. I hit record on my phone. The first call was mundane. She needed a small loan to cover a supposed emergency. Her car had broken down, she said. The tone of her voice was familiar, the same rehearsed desperation I had heard countless times. But as the minutes passed, the words that followed painted a very different picture than the one I had imagined. The stress, the worry, it was all an act. And then came the calls that revealed the pattern, the true extent of her deception. Every loan request, every sob story, every tearful apology, it was carefully calculated. Not once had she intended to pay me back. She was taking advantage of a love I had never questioned, exploiting a bond one had held sacred. The realization was gut-wrenching, a deep cut that no amount of time could heal. The recordings continued for weeks. I started to notice details I had never caught in real time. The sighs, the pauses, the carefully chosen words. Each call was a performance, and I had unwittingly been part of her audience. There was a call where she claimed her landlord had threatened to evict her unless she paid immediately. I listened as she meticulously described her emergency in a way that sounded convincing to anyone. But cross-referencing dates, bills, and even her social media activity, nothing matched. Every word was a lie. I felt trapped between anger and disbelief. How could my own daughter do this to me? How could she manipulate me so flawlessly, so repeatedly, without me realizing it? I thought of the countless nights I had worried about her, stayed awake while she called crying about her troubles, lent her money I couldn't really afford to part with. And all the while, she was laughing somewhere, planning her next call, her next request, her next deception. The recordings became evidence, not just of her lies, but of my own blind trust. Listening back, I heard a side of her I had never known. Her tone changed subtly when speaking to friends, the way she discussed debts with them, often mocking or dismissive, never regretful. Each call was a revelation, another layer peeling away from the daughter I thought I knew. And yet, beneath it all, I still struggled to reconcile reality with memory. This was my child, my blood, and yet the voice on the recording spoke of a stranger who had infiltrated my life, pretending to be family. I began documenting everything: dates, amounts, promises, and broken promises. I created spreadsheets, detailed notes, a record of every single interaction I could remember. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about understanding the pattern, the strategy she used to manipulate me. Every lie had a method, every request a calculated angle, every tear a tool for persuasion. And through all of it, I realized something darker. This wasn't just about financial gain. It was about control, about power. She had found a way to assert dominance over the one person who would always say yes, and she did it flawlessly. The turning point came on a quiet Friday evening. She called, her tone trembling as always. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she whispered, a phrase I had heard countless times. But this time I was ready. I let her speak, recording every syllable, every inflection, every emotional plea. And then, after she hung up, I played the call back. And there it was, the full picture. Her lies, meticulously layered, every detail designed to extract as much as possible. My heart sank as I realized just how much I had been deceived, how long this had been going on, and how skillfully she had hidden it. I remember sitting there for hours after that call, phone in hand, feeling a mix of rage, sorrow, and disbelief. I kept asking myself the same questions. Why? How? When did it start? Was it me? Did I fail as a parent? The answers weren't simple. The truth was, she had learned to exploit weaknesses she observed in me over years. She knew my patience, my empathy, my unconditional love. She had weaponized them, using the very qualities that defined our bond against me. And yet, amidst the betrayal, a strange clarity emerged. I had evidence now, real proof, undeniable proof of every lie, every manipulation, every deceit. The recordings were no longer just files on my phone, they were a shield, a weapon, and a mirror reflecting a truth I had refused to see. They gave me power, the power to confront, to protect myself, and maybe even to save her, from herself, or at least from the path she had chosen. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized this was bigger than money. It was about trust. It was about love. It was about a parent's deepest fear. The realization that the person you nurtured, the person you believed in with every fiber of your being, might be capable of deliberate, repeated betrayal. Each call, each recording, each moment of deception was a revelation, a crack in the foundation of everything I thought I knew about my daughter. And yet, in the shadows of my disbelief, a single thought kept repeating. I had to know the full story. I had to understand how far this went. I had to hear every call, track every lie, and see every pattern. Because only then could I face the reality. My daughter had used me for loans. And she didn't know I had recorded every single one. That single one recording became my obsession. I couldn't stop replaying it. Her voice haunted me. Not the sweet voice I had cherished, but the calculating tone she had perfected. Each word, each pause, every inflection. It was as if she had studied me for years, learning exactly how to bend my heart. I could hear it now, not as a daughter asking for help, but as someone plotting, strategizing, executing a plan that I had unknowingly fueled. I spent that night going through old messages, bank transfers, even old voicemails. Each clue I found pointed to the same truth. This wasn't a recent thing. She had been manipulating me for years, perfectly masking it with love and affection. I found messages where she casually mentioned borrowing again in tones so light, so casual, it was as if she expected it, and I had given it every single time. My anger surged, but it was mixed with disbelief. How could she do this without a flicker of guilt? How could I have been so blind? The next morning, I knew I couldn't just sit and stew in betrayal. I had to track everything. I set up a system. Every call, every text, every transaction was logged. I began cataloging her lies. The first week alone revealed patterns I had never noticed before. She always timed her calls strategically. Late nights, just before payday, when I was tired or stressed or emotionally vulnerable. She played on my empathy like a master musician, hitting the chords she knew would resonate. Then came the escalation. One call after another, the amounts requested increased dramatically. She no longer asked for a few $100s. Now it was thousands. Car emergencies, medical bills, credit card crises, each story more elaborate than the last. Listening back, I could hear the rehearsed pauses, the scripted sobs, the calculated urgency. I started to realize that this wasn't desperation. It was performance. A performance designed to manipulate me into giving what she wanted without question. One particular call stuck in my mind. She said her boss had demanded an immediate payment for a professional emergency, or she'd lose her job. I remember her voice trembling just enough to convince me, but the recording told a different story. She sounded almost amused when she thought I wouldn't hear the background, laughing quietly after I promised to send the money. That's when I understood fully. She never intended to tell the truth. Every plea, every tear, every frantic apology was an act. I felt my world crumble, not just because of the money, but because of the betrayal. The realization that the person I had loved without condition had been deceiving me, manipulating me, and laughing behind the curtain. It was gut-wrenching. I remembered nights I had stayed awake, worried about her, listening to her cries over the phone, giving her money I couldn't spare, and all along, she had been acting. My love, my trust, my sleepless nights, she had weaponized them against me. But the recordings also gave me power. I had proof now, undeniable evidence. I could play every call, every word, every tearful plea, and show the pattern, the calculation, the manipulation. For the first time, I felt a shift from victim to observer. I wasn't just being used, I was witnessing the method behind it. And with that awareness came clarity. I had to confront her, but I couldn't do it blindly. I needed strategy. I began to plan. I decided to create a single, comprehensive record of every call, every lie, every manipulation. I spent hours cross-referencing dates with bank statements, comparing her stories with reality, documenting inconsistencies, and building a complete picture. It was painstaking work, but necessary. The more I uncovered, the more I realized the scope of her deception. This wasn't occasional borrowing, it was a systematic exploitation of my love and trust over years. There was one call that changed everything. She was asking for a loan, as usual, but this time she made a critical mistake. She mentioned details that contradicted another lie she had told me just a week before. I paused the recording and played it back repeatedly. The contradictions were undeniable. This was the smoking gun, the undeniable evidence of intentional manipulation. My stomach turned. I had been fooled by her consistency before, by her charm, by the very bond one thought protected me. But this was deliberate. With each recording, each lie exposed, my anger and sadness intertwined. I wanted to scream at her, to confront her, to make her see the damage she had caused. But I also felt a strange sadness, a mourning for the child I thought I had raised, for the trust that had been violated. The voice on the recording was no longer the daughter I knew. It was someone entirely different, someone who had learned to exploit me with precision. And yet, I couldn't turn away. I had to know how far it went. I started playing old messages, reviewing every voicemail I could find. There was one thread where she casually mentioned borrowing from multiple family members, weaving a web of lies that extended beyond me. The pattern was astonishing. She had created a network of manipulation, carefully selecting targets, timing requests, and adjusting stories based on the person she was speaking to. She wasn't just deceitful. She was strategic, calculating, and terrifyingly effective. Then came the revelation I had feared but needed. I discovered that some of the loans she had taken were being spent not on emergencies, but on luxuries, dinners, shopping sprees, and trips. Listening to the calls now, the performance was clear. The emotions, the fear, the desperation, all tools to extract as much as possible from me and others. My own love, my own sacrifices, had fueled her lifestyle. The realization was crushing, but the recordings weren't just proof of deception, they were my lifeline. They were the means by which I could regain control. I began to understand the psychology behind her actions, the triggers she exploited, the moments she knew I would respond. And with that understanding came resolve. I would confront her, but on my terms. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but armed with truth, clarity, and undeniable evidence. I spent nights compiling everything into a single, structured record. Each call, each lie, each request meticulously logged. The narrative was clear now, a detailed map of manipulation, deceit, and exploitation. Listening back, I could trace the evolution of her strategy over the years, the sophistication increasing, the stakes higher, the lies more intricate. The recordings had transformed from simple evidence into a roadmap, a revelation, and a testament to the truth. By the time I had finished reviewing everything, I realized one thing. I couldn't continue living in denial. I couldn't ignore the betrayal. I had to act, and I had to act decisively. I had the recordings, I had the proof, and I had the clarity to face her. But before confrontation could happen, I needed one final step. Understanding the full depth of her actions, every call, every lie, every manipulation, and the impact it had not just on me, but on everyone around her. That single one recording had started it all, but it was only the beginning. The deeper I dug, the more I realized how much I didn't know. And as I prepared for the confrontation that would change everything, one thought stayed with me. She had used me for years, but she didn't know I had recorded every single call. And now the truth was mine to reveal.